How about this one? The Steelers released this week Darius Slay out of Brunswick, Georgia. They have replaced him with essentially Asante Samuel Jr. There's a name we haven't heard all year. Very small sample size, but he's given up a lot of production, 0.79 fantasy points per route run. That's a good matchup there for Zay Flowers. I know we are relying on Lamar, but they do play a lot of single high. That's good for Zay Flowers. Jameson Williams against Trikweze Bridges, who gives up 0.46 fantasy points per route run, but I guess there is an outside chance that Trevon Diggs plays. I saw he was limited. I'm not sure if he's just ramping up for a return next week, perhaps. But for now, Jamo up against Bridges. Jamo versus Trevon Diggs would be quite interesting. But Bridges is currently giving up 0.46 fantasy points per route run. FYI, our projection maven over at fantasypoints.com, as of today, has Jamo Williams number one at wide receiver for the week. Deebo Samuel, I was about ready to write him off, but he did show up last week, much to my surprise, and we do have a good matchup this week against Minnesota. They play a ton of two high safeties, and that's Deebo's jam. You know, when you have that space underneath from the two high safety looks, that's kind of where Deebo does his work. So that's why it's a good schematic matchup. He'll see a lot of Josh Metellus, who he's giving 0.45 fantasy points per route run, which is really quite bad, quite frankly. It's probably one of the 5 worst on the board this week. Next up, we do have a good matchup for Mr. Jackson Smith and Jigba up against Mike Hughes, former number 1 pick of the Vikings. I remember when they made that pick, I hated it because that was Mike Zimmer, a.k.a. Captain Caveman, just continuing to load up on defense and corners when they didn't have enough on offense. But that's neither here nor there. Good matchup for JSN. If he didn't knock you out of the running last week, you're probably going to be good to go and rewarded with another 80-plus yard game with 5-plus catches. Next and last, tomorrow, it's a good matchup all around for the Cowboy wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb, going to see a lot of Rock Ya-Sin, who is not giving up a ton right now, but he's not a full-time player or hasn't been a full-time player, and he's a former number 1 pick bust of I think it was the Colts or the Raiders. I know he was on both squads, but it's a good matchup for CeeDee Lamb. Some bad matchups here by the numbers. Michael Wilson up against Darious Williams, who is giving up just 0.27 fantasy points per route run. Wilson also, let's be honest, took a little bit of a step back last week after being on a 2-game roll. That's the problem with this year. When you have a guy, he's rolling 2 games, then you're like, let's hop aboard, and then the run ends, as it did last week for Michael Wilson. DJ Moore up against Carrington Valentine, gives up only 0.26 fantasy points per route run, and DJ Moore is very untrustworthy. I know he had a good game a couple weeks ago. That was a little bit of a surprise. On 1 touchdown, they literally forgot to cover him. I mean, you had to throw to him at that play because he was wide-ass open. Next, we have Odunze in that very same game. So, obviously, we're not feeling warm and fuzzy about Caleb Williams. He'll see a lot of Keyshawn Nixon, who's given up just 0.24 fantasy points per route run. They have been a little more suspect there on the outside, but they're generally stingy, and they have obviously a good pass rush. And Odunze is not good against zone, period. Lad McConkey, he's hitting a little bit of a struggle bus lately. We actually did an under on him a couple weeks ago, which we won, and that was hurtful because I'm a Lad McConkey person. But he's going to see a good amount of Cooper DeJean, obviously, in the slot on Monday night, who's only giving up 0.21 fantasy points per route run. That's one of the problems with the LA. And when you have myriad options, if one guy has a tougher matchup, you're like, all right, see you next week, dude. We're going to throw it to Quentin Johnston. We'll throw it to Keenan Allen. We'll throw it to Aronde Gadsden. Hell, we'll throw it to Trey Harris, the rookie, who's out there playing, by the way. And then last but not least, Darnell Mooney. Been a disastrous year for Mooney. I'm a huge Mooney guy. I don't even know. We can't even grade him this year. It's been like I said, it's a disaster for them. with the revolving door at quarterback and not a good offense. And for Mooney with myriad injuries, he'll see a lot of Devin Witherspoon. So probably not going to go there. A few more matchups that really stand out. These are elite matchups per our matchup grade for the week. Zay Flowers, numero uno on the week. By the way, Deebo Samuel, we already mentioned him, second best. JMO, fourth best. Not for nothing, I might have to consider my guy, Isaac Tesla, for a special. Justin Jefferson. This is it, Justin. You are putting, in my opinion, your legacy on the line a little bit for these next 4 games. We all know the Vikings are in the dirt, currently taking a dirt nap, but in terms of playoff run hopes and dreams. But the next 4 weeks are optimal matchups for the offense. And this week it starts here. Mike Sainristil getting beaten like left and right. He's not bad, but he's being asked to do a little bit more than he's capable, I think. So that's a good one right there. Let's see here. Jordan Addison's also coming up pretty high here as well. Terry McLaurin, pretty high. You're going to see a lot of Isaiah Rodgers, Romeo Dobbs in that game, Nashawn Wright. He comes in pretty high. Now, Christian Watson comes in high, but the individual matchup against Jalen Johnson scares me just a little bit. In that same game, Dontavian Wicks comes in high. You got Kyler Gordon back for the Bears. I believe he's coming back this week. I think he was out last week, trending toward a return. So actually, it's full strength with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon. Alec Pierce, just start him. He is the one. He'll see a good amount of Greg Newsome. That's a pretty good matchup there. We did like Cortland Sutton last week. He comes in pretty high on the list with a positive matchup. Oh, by the way, one other guy, Chris Godwin. I think it's time to maybe buy low if you can on Godwin. He looked good last week. He looked very good. So I think he's back.
Thanks for watching, but don't let the betting insights end here. If you want an extra edge this football season, you can get a month of VSiN Pro right now absolutely free. That means access to our betting insights, analysis, and tools like our betting splits at 0 cost to you. Click the link in the description to sign up.